And she said, no, there's something that I need to tell you. And I said, is it bad? She said, yes. And I said, is it about the marriage? And she said, yes. And then we began to drive back.
Welcome to Spiritual Fitness. My name is Kanini. If you're new to this channel, you're welcome. And if this is not your first time, thank you so much for your continued support and tuning into my channel. And I also want to say this. If you like this video and what we are going to share here, please leave a comment and like and subscribe. Emotional intelligence is the #1 indicator why some people are successful and why some people are not. Life being life, life will life. Life is going to put you in an incredible place where sometimes you suffer great loss, injury, anything. Life will do that. What gets you out of that big hole is emotional resilience. How do you get that emotional intelligence and resilience so that you're able to, go about life feeling that everything is going to be okay? That is what we want to talk about. I wanted us to look at this incredible story of Dr. Area, and he's a high performance coach, and he's talking about a time in life when everything fell apart. And I'll let you listen to this video by yourself, because in case you haven't watched it, I don't want to be the one to ruin it for you.
That day, I decided that I wanted to spend 30 minutes talking about marriage, cheating, love, and asking you these very personal questions about monogamy, which I've never done before with any guest ever, and which I really had no place or reason to ask you more than anyone else. And when I listened to that podcast back, I now noticed why you laughed. Because it wasn't, you laughed, and it wasn't a normal laugh. It was like a real belly laugh, right? Yeah. Like a bit of a nervous belly laugh.
Yeah.
After our 30-minute conversation about marriage and monogamy and cheating and love, what did you say to me?
I told you a story.
Yeah.
And that was about 2 weeks earlier. I'd been traveling back from London home, and I got out of the train station, and my wife picked me up, and we got into the car, and we had planned to go and have a brunch at my favorite little spot. They do amazing Cuervo's Rancho sauce. I was very excited. And she said, let's go straight home. I've made sandwiches. And she doesn't make great sandwiches. So I said, no, I think the brunch is a better option. And I had this sinking feeling in me. And we drove for about 5 minutes in silence. And then I went to put my hand on her lap. And she said, don't touch me, because you won't want to after I've told you what's happened. And that's whenever it dropped. And I remember that 10-minute drive back home then felt like an eternity. I was just looking out the window. And we got home, got into the house, into the kitchen. And I was standing by the kitchen table, hands rested on it. And I said, what's happened? And she said, I've been having an affair with a man from work. And I remember just tears began to stream. I didn't move, completely motionless. Tears began to stream. And then she said, and that's not all. She said, I'm pregnant with this child. And in that moment, I felt like I lost a lot. I'd lost my wife. I'd lost the life we created. I'd lost the dog, our home, my parents-in-law, her family, everything that I'd really held dear. If someone said, what makes a meaningful life? I would have described these things. And it felt like they'd just been snatched away, just came crumbling down like a house of cards.
So he realizes that at this moment, his wife has been having an affair and she's pregnant with that other man's child. So in that instant, and this is the sad thing, he realizes he's like this guy we call Job in the Bible, right? The wife, the dog, the house, she has gone and she's taking it to another man, right? It's all gone. And his training kicks in.
Buddhist exploration and understanding the nature of life. And I came to this realization that life involves suffering. There's no promise that it's going to be happy-go-lucky and really pleasant all the time. Really horrific things happen in life. And on one level, there's no way that we can ever rationally explain it away. sometimes bad things happen, but it doesn't end there. It's a bit like that line that someone once said to me: whenever you're suffering, don't ask God, why am I suffering? Ask God, where are you taking me?
This is the past. The first thing that he does is that he realizes his loss. At this time, he starts to accept immediately that his marriage is over because his wife is already pregnant with another man. She is starting a family with somebody else. At this point, he starts to understand that his marriage is done, it's over, and that's why he starts mourning the loss of his marriage right there on the kitchen table. Because of the way he has wired himself, he starts to accept. Acceptance is something that you have to do. I used to think that, with time I'll accept things. And now from him, I see that with acceptance is you be proactive about it. You know it's over, so you start accepting. You be proactive about accepting your loss. So he starts to accept there and there, because once you start fighting the situation, and that it's inevitable. This is a situation that you cannot change. Once you start fighting it, now you're going against the grain. And you're going to lose out in the end. It's just going to be double pain for you. So he understands this. This is why emotional intelligence is important. You understand that you have lost it and you cut your losses. He understands that. So when you go through a loss, acceptance is going to be very, very critical for you. It's something that you must do. And the quicker you do it, the better for you. The other thing I see here that's very, very important is that he anchors himself back to his faith in God. And instead of blaming God and asking, why is this happening to me? Why me? He asks better questions. God, where are you taking me? What do you want me to learn from this situation? That kind of intelligence, asking the right question and also leaning into the protection of God is anchoring himself. He's anchoring himself. So here we see two things, right? Anchoring himself in the Word of God, and he's also learned from the Buddhist traditions to accept that life is life. Bad things can happen to him, to anybody. Anything can happen. And he can't fight against life because this is life. That's the life that we live in. So him accepting life will give me a challenge. Life is going to do whatever life does. Life is lifing. And he asks God, what can I learn from this situation? Where will you take me after this situation? Incredible resilience here that I see.
Anger. So many people in that situation, whether rightly or wrongly, just because of the way that they are, would have reacted with anger. And for some reason, you were both calm in telling me you're calm now. And this remarkable thing, which I think I struggle to understand a little bit, is one of your first concerns was her well-being versus your own. Why?
Because I loved her, and I was in the practice of placing her emotional well-being and her happiness on the same level as mine, if not sometimes first and foremostly, but at least on an equal playing field. And I was just so in that habit, and that was the toughest thing to let go of. The thing that I still struggle with today, and I'm still, it's the one part that I realized the other day, that I still had a fear of upsetting her or of her not being okay. And so that's something which just just really developed and was so ingrained. And it's interesting on the point of anger.
Oh, this one is an important point that I wanted us to go through. How do you know that somebody truly, truly loves you? That somebody actually cares about you and they truly love you? And I think you know this because of the way they make you feel. When they talk to you, are they tender and nice? Are they caring? Do they communicate that they put your well-being first? Are they saying that, oh, I care about this person? When they talk to you, when they touch you, how do you feel with this person? Do you feel safe or do you feel anxious? Do they agitate you by bringing arguments, by, just the way the environment that they put at home? Do they cook you a meal and bring it to you, ask you, darling, how are you doing? How was your day? Do they communicate? Do they want you to feel safe, hard, and calm? That is medicine. That is love. That is the medicine that we get from love. If somebody agitates you all the time, doesn't listen, frustrated, you know that they probably don't care about you. And I can see that he loved his ex-wife, because even after he realizes that she cheated on him and she got pregnant, he still does not want to hurt her feelings, because he's trained himself to care for her. So in this moment, it will be even against his mind and his nature and the way he approaches her to be mad. And a lot of people who have been abused, when they wrong you, they sometimes would expect that you behave in the pattern of their abuser in the past, but they don't realize that you love them and you want them to feel good. And that is something that psychologists we can talk about in the future. There's also something that I found, that sometimes let people be responsible for their feelings when they do something bad, so that they can feel the hurt and learn from it. Just being responsible for your feelings it's a generous way to let them feel their feelings and they'll be fine with it. So on this part, I kind of understand him, but on another edge, I'm like, this woman should be able to also deal with the pain of her emotion, of the emotions that she has caused. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, when you go through pain, you don't want to be consumed by anger, because anger is like a poison. It's like taking poison and then you're hoping that it will hurt somebody else, but it ends up poisoning you. So I incredibly see this emotional intelligence from him, where he does not want to be angry with her. So he's still wanting her the best and caring about her emotions and how she feels. There is a point of me that is like, stop caring about somebody who's hurt you so much. Let them deal with the pain of what they have done.
If you said, look, your wife, partner for 10 years, married for 5, has an affair and is pregnant with another man's child, how will you react? I would have said anger. I'd be furious. But it wasn't there, at least not initially. It was this overwhelming sense of sadness. It was just that sense of loss, of knowing that, again, that she's potentially done something that she might regret for a long time. And I don't want anyone to go through that experience where they feel like they've fucked up hugely. Even if the future is positive in that moment, my sense is there will be regret, or at least shame. And that's why I cried so much, because there was so much sadness.
Did you write down the emotions you were experiencing?
So I didn't write down the emotions, but what I did in the next step is So the first step was awareness and accepting whatever emotions I felt. And seeing that they come and then they go. You know, that there'd be moments where I'd be laughing with my brother and then crying a minute later and then talking about something else.
I like this idea of you're going through a difficult time in your life, but you go through it one step at a time, you know. And some things like are hard, incredibly hard in life. Maybe it's your partner, they are sick, you know, you have to go through, you know, one step at a time. You know, by the time probably they are sick to the time they die, it's one step at a time. You wake up, you make them food, you help them with everything, you know. It's like you're just going through the motion by one step at a time, you know. It's like your life is going through in slow motion at that time, you know. You know, because sometimes you're just there sailing, very vulnerable, and nobody else can understand it. So the way that you understand that today I'm feeling frustrated, today I'm feeling angry, today I'm feeling helpless, like going through those motions, you know, it's okay. It's okay to go through those motions. It's a lonely place to be, but these emotions, they have to come, you know, they have to come up and you have to feel them, and then, you know, kind of like say, welcome these emotions. I feel it. And then when it goes, right? And then the other one comes up, you know, the anger, the frustration, the vulnerability, you know, the confusion. You have to welcome these emotions. Don't be like, I'm the tough one. You know, I cannot feel this. It's okay to cry. It's okay to feel all these emotions, you know.
Was reminding myself of reality. Because I was so ingrained in an internal model of what life looked like. I have a strong, stable marriage in which my partner subconsciously, you know, implicitly, I believe, is faithful. We're meant to be together. We're going to be together for the next 50, 60 years until one of us dies. We're going to have children together. That was my internal model. And I had to rip it apart. I had to take it down. I had to dismantle it. And I had to remind myself of the reality of the situation. I had to accept it. I had to accept it's over. It's not going to change. There's no going back. The final nail is in the coffin. And you need to take that on board.
There we see another thing, the paradigm shift. The paradigm shift. And this something happens when you go through an incredible loss. Something, the world as you knew it has changed. When you go through loss, that's like something that you have to get. The world as you knew it, everything like you knew about the world has changed. You know, it could be that incredible betrayal. Like, this is the person you've loved for 10 years. They've been your best friend and they've betrayed you and they've gone and, you know, cheated on you with somebody else and had a baby. Your life has changed completely. There is nothing that's remaining the same. Like, you thought, I would get married, I'd have children, and then I'd probably, you know, build my business. This person I'm going to die with. That is all done. You know, it's like water under the bridge. All of a sudden it's gone. It's a pure loss. And this can happen. You had this incredible job, you are making millions of dollars, all of a sudden you're fired. It's done. Your world has changed. There is nothing remaining the same. Your entire life changing. Or, you know, you lose a child. Everything you knew about, you know, that you died before your children, that worldview, paradigm is shifting. There is nothing left. When you go through loss, there is always going to be that paradigm shift. Your life is going to change incredibly. You know, your life is going to change incredibly. And we forget that one part. You know, we don't want to accept. And we don't. There is nothing in your life that wants to accept this. And you have to understand, it's not that life is just happening. Is our emotions, our reality has been challenged, and we don't want to let go, right? We don't want to let go. We have to let go. There is nothing else, there is nothing else. And kind of reminding yourself, everything has changed. Life is different, and trying to move on and trying to find new ways to cope with the situation, new ways to be, even incredibly happy about the situation. Whatever you need, but you need to accept this, that your life has changed.
And I'd also I'd write down reminders of what had happened. And I also wrote down any insights I had about the situation that I could remind myself of. And I wrote down how I wanted to handle this process.
So when he writes it down, like how he wants to go through this process, and I think this is an incredible way, he thinks about the person that he wants to be when he gets through this process. He wants to maintain his character, his dignity.
I can actually read a few out if you want. Please. I've got so I literally would just write them down on my phone. And so afterwards I began to split them up into different sections. Mm-hmm. But this one was for the process. Hold yourself to the highest standard. Choose actions that you can be proud of. How you get through this process is more important than how quickly you get through this process.
He wants to maintain his character, his dignity. He wants to maintain who he is. And so that's why he decides it's not how fast I get out of this situation, but how I get out of this situation. Already we can see this higher level of thinking when you start thinking about how am I going to handle this? How am I going to manage myself out of this situation? How am I going to behave when life throws me this incredible challenge ahead of me? How am I going to maneuver myself out of it with dignity, with self-love, with confidence?
For me, it's important that I still lived with personal integrity, that I wasn't warped or changed or consumed with vengeance or acted in ways that was out of spite or out of emotion. I wanted to be able to look back on this in 12 months, 18 months time and still feel good about it, have a clear conscience, still able to put my head down and feel as though I handled that to the best of my ability. With God, you can get through this. You can become stronger, wiser, more caring, more compassionate, and more loving. And that's another theme, that actually the deepest moments of suffering can actually be opportunities for growth. Even if you don't want it, there's something there that you can learn and can grow from.
So ultimately, what people who have been emotionally hurt from maybe something like this, that they would do, they'll probably go burn that other person's house down, deflate their tires in the car, key their car, or start sending them nasty messages. I thought you were so incredibly nice of a person. Now look at you. You're just like, any other person who just cheats and does all this. No. He decided, I'm going to manage this situation and I'm going to manage it with grace and character and dignity. You can still master dignity as a child of God in incredible difficult situations. They don't have to control you. I didn't know this for a long time. I didn't know this for a long time. I didn't know this for a long time. Now that I see like how people manage things. I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So why didn't I ever think this way? You know, why didn't I ever think this way? Yeah, I guess you don't know what you don't know, but now you know.
You don't need anything from her anymore. And then different reminders. You have nothing to feel bad about. You aren't responsible. You have nothing to feel guilty about. Nothing. Because there were moments where my mind would almost begin to, in a way, play a trick on me and begin to try and create reasons to feel bad or to try and create shame. And at those times, while I would accept what came up, I decided not to pursue that line of thinking because that didn't fit. Whenever I was calm and clear, this came to me. And so I'd write down whatever came to me.
And we see he's incredible. Like, honestly, as a high performance coach, he's very incredible. We can learn a lot from his life situation. He writes it down to remind himself, I'm no longer married and I'm no longer a married man. And the love of my life has moved on and she is having a family with another man. That's the reality I have to accept. He writes it down. She is with somebody else. They're having a baby. They're going to have an incredible, happy family. It's done. And I feel betrayed and angry. And I have to accept this situation. You write it over and over and over and over. And then he also writes what he wants out of this situation. I don't want to be angry with her. I don't want to go and shoot that husband, that wife stealing bastard. I don't want to go and shoot him and kill him. Although I want to, I don't want to go to jail. I have a life afterwards. I want to have an incredible life after this man. He writes what he wants to do. He writes, I can imagine if that was me, that's what I would write, right? I don't want to kill you, but I want to kill you. But I want, because I don't want to go to jail. And I also want to heal from these emotions. I want to heal. I will have a good life after this. It's going to be incredible. I'm going to inspire somebody to live a better life. I'm going to take the best from this situation. He writes it down. He's like, that's incredible. That's incredible. He writes it down. You can write down, then remind yourself of the situation that has happened. If you're having problems accepting the new reality, write it down. And also write what you want, the best outcome you want for yourself in this situation, because you can't change things. Now, what's the best outcome that can happen for you? You can heal emotionally, you can move on, all that stuff, you write it down. That was a very, very incredible.
Whenever I was in a place of wisdom, then when the emotion hit and I'm not seeing clearly and I've got on a clouded lens, this little baby became my best friend because I'd go back to it and I'd remind myself, and then it'd reshift my mental paradigm.
I have this, before, please do keep your phone open.
This is another incredible thing, that when he was calm and clear, he was able to see his mind when it was under distress, and when his mind was blaming him for what happened. You're guilty, maybe you could have done this or that, you made your wife unhappy. This mind happens to the best of us. It's the survival mind. It can start blaming you, making you feel guilty, making you feel shame, you getting divorced, blah, 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 right? And incredibly, when he is calm, when he goes into his stillness, is misguided. This is not the correct way of thinking. He writes to himself, I am not guilty of this situation. This is not something that I should be ashamed about. Okay, I don't want to cry. You can imagine when you get divorced, some people will try to shame you, obviously. Some people will try to make you feel guilty, but you know that it has happened. There is actually nothing much you can do about the situation you're in. You have to go through it. It's good to remind yourself, like, this is not a situation to be guilty about. It's not a situation to be ashamed about. She fell in love with somebody else. If you think about it, it's not really something for her to be guilty about or to be ashamed about. It happened. Right? It happened, and it has happened. Now it's how you move past it that's important. How you move past it, that's important. How you accept the new situation, that's important. I think that takes incredible amount of grace. You know, reality check. Checking your mind. Hey, go back in line. Right? It's incredibly hard. But again, writing it down. Again, we see here like a very, very powerful tool about how he overcame this situation.
Because I want to hear the rest of this.
Oh, okay.
But I have this analogy I make in moments where I experience a very similar thing. That I'm going to take one example.
Yeah.
It's the closest I can come to resonating with what your experience is. I was dating this girl, and I broke up with her, and 3 days later, I find out that she's had sex with someone else. Right? And I can only, the way that I described it was, I'm flying on this plane and I'm the pilot. And then suddenly when I look down and hear the news that she's just slept with somebody else, it was like terrorists stormed the cockpit and they chucked the fucking rational pilot out, and they were threatening to crash the whole fucking thing. Right? And my whole objective as the pilot is to get back into the cockpit before they crash this plane into the side of a mountain. Because if they crash the plane, I'm fucked. And so what I wanted to do was lose my integrity. I wanted to crash the plane. I wanted to get her back, take revenge, tell her she's a this, and a this, and a this, and a this. And it was this, because I've got to a place of where I'm able to hold situations out in front of me a little bit more than I ever was, in the past. I was at war with myself. It was the terrorists on one end telling me to crash the plane, and the pilot saying, "You've been here before. You just need to keep the plane in the air until you." So I'm going for a run. I'm like, Steve, go to the gym. Go for a run, clear your head. I'm at the gym, the terrorists, and I'm like, I'm going to finish it. I'm going to finish it back in. And then I come back and back in. And the crazy conclusion to all of this was my friend called me and said a few things to me about why she did what she did. My friend said to me, remember, Steve, you rejected her. She really, really, really likes you. And she's done this as a way to make herself feel better for the rejection that you gave her. And it sounds like such a pathetic thing to say, but what it made me realize in that moment was much of the reason why the terrorists had stormed the cockpit was my ego was bruised. And the thing that coached those terrorists out the cockpit was my friend massaging my ego again.
The hardest way is to deal with your ego. Our ego is incredibly deceptive. Incredibly deceptive because it's our source of pride. We want to feel good about ourselves, and when that ego is bruised, when the ego is bruised, it just hurts. There is anger, and I don't know what else can hurt a man like somebody else sleeping with his wife. That's like, I think the pain of childbirth, it has to be incredibly painful. I feel for this guy. Even Stephen is saying, when the girlfriend that he broke up with slept with another man, he felt anger. That is like incredible. You broke up with her. If you didn't want this outcome to happen, why would you? But then there's still that ego. You can't just move on that fast, like you just cannot. And he says, like, massaging the ego can help. When somebody massages the ego, it's like, you broke her heart, you're the one who caused this, she was incredibly hard. And then he's like, oh, okay then, okay, it's not that bad, I'm still the big guy, okay, fine. That is a massaged ego that's a little bit less problematic to you for now. It will surface in the future. It will surface in the future, but don't worry. For now, just massage it. It can go away. If you can learn to massage your ego so that it doesn't hurt more, good for you. You have learned the trick of life, And I find that this is incredibly good when you're in a relationship and you know how to massage somebody's ego. For example, if you tell your husband or your boyfriend, you have the most incredible smile I have ever seen in the universe. You are the most handsome man I've ever laid my eyes on. Even if they are not, tell them. Massage that ego. I had this one boss, and if she called you and you did something wrong, you only had to compliment her on something that she's wearing. Oh my goodness, I love your hair. Oh, where did you buy that jacket? And then she would be nice to you. And I didn't discover this. It was one of my friends who told me that that's how she's like. And so I knew I was doing like data entry and I was making a lot of mistakes. And every time, I would walk into her office, I would compliment her. She had beautiful eyes, and I'd compliment her. Oh my goodness, your eyes look incredible, beautiful today. And then she'll be like, oh really? Yeah. Oh my goodness, I like your smile. She would smile and then I'd compliment her smile. By the time we are 2 minutes into the conversation, she's even forgotten my sins, what I did. I'd get an easy pass. Massaging the ego can actually really help. The ego is a big problem in your life, in my life, in everybody's life. We really have to check it. And then the way Aria here is saying, detaching, learning to a little bit detach from the ego can actually be very, very beneficial. The ego is the enemy. Your number one enemy in your life is your ego. I've come to realize this. It's your ego. Because you can't believe when people betray you, how little they think of you, how stupid they must be thinking about you, or, when what do you do when you think you're here and people are treating you like you're here? When you work so hard to improve yourself and to better yourself, but some people still treat you like you're here, very, very low, right? For me, what I have come to know is that when I move through life humbling myself, I'm able to maneuver more situations, right? Because if I go feeling like here and everybody is here, right? It's going to be very hard to relate with people. That's not a good way. That's your ego sabotaging you. It wants to feel important and tower over people. And if you want to really be a leader, you become a servant. You lead from behind. You humble yourself so that you take care of the ego problem. The problem of the ego is that it lacks humility. And that is why I say, humble yourself before God so that you can be lifted up. Learn that you're not always wise. The Bible is always saying about this incredible thing about feeling wise in your own eyes, right? Don't be that fool who is incredibly wise in your own eyes. It's good to be humble. The problem of the ego is that the ego lacks humility. So learning to be vulnerable, learning to massage it, so that it doesn't really hurt you like that can really help. And yeah, the ego, when you're going through loss, you know, it's the ego trying to tell you, why is this happening to you? You deserve better. Why is it like blah, blah, blah? It's the ego that's trying to antagonize you. That's why you need to separate yourself from the ego and realize, I'm just a human being. Incredible things can happen to me. And when they do, I will still try to carry myself with grace and dignity. And I know that God is with me. And after the end of it all, after the end of this story, I'm going to be victorious. And then towards the end, Steve Bartlett is describing the ego as a terrorist. And I can tell you, that is probably one of the best explanations or analogies. That is probably one of the best analogies I've heard about the ego. A terrorist. It terrorizes us. The ego can make you make incredibly bad decisions just because it's trying to feel powerful. And we can end up making bad choices in our lives. You have to be aware of this terrorist. And I find humility as the best way out of the ego. So I'm going to end this video for today here because, you know, if we were to analyze this, we could go on until the cows come home. If you want to see the whole video, just go to Stephen Bartlett's Diary of the CEO. Watch this incredible interview. It's going to teach you how to become emotionally resilient. Emotional resilience is the number one indicator why some people are successful in life and why some people are not successful in life. My advice to you is prioritize learning how to deal with your emotions. It's going to be a skill going to take you places. This is the skill that took, what's the name? Joseph, the little boy Joseph in the Bible, from being, you know, a slave when his brother sold him into slavery in Egypt, and then he became the prime minister of Egypt. This skill of humility is the one that took him into so much greatness, and learning to submit your ego under the authority of God is probably the safest thing you can do to yourself. Again, if you're watching this video, please like, subscribe. Again, my name is Kanini and this is Heal Your Energy. And if you've been through trauma, I always say hashtag post-traumatic joy, hashtag post-traumatic bliss. Everything is going to be all right.